It was once said by a fellow YouTuber and guitarist that the single most important element of a guitar is the neck. And I tend to agree with this statement. I don't care what body style it is, what pickups are installed, what brand the instrument is. If I don't like the neck, or it just doesn't feel comfortable, or I can't play it well, I'm going to be picking up a different guitar. So this video will help you if you're trying to decide which Fender guitar to purchase based on the neck. Or maybe it'll help you decide which neck to buy to place on your own partscaster, like I like to do. Now, a few things to keep in mind. We're not going to be able to consider every line of Fender guitars today. There's Ventera, Parallel Universe, Noventa, so many different ones. So we're going to focus on the main line of Fender guitars, starting with the Player Series, then the American Performer, American Professional, and American Ultra. And we are going to be looking at only the maple variants today, not the rosewood ones or Pau Ferro. If you'd like to see another video with maybe some of those fingerboards, let me know in the comment section below. Without further ado, let's get to the guitars and the necks. The Player Series. A fantastic way to get started in guitars if you are not already an avid guitar player. This is from 2020, a Fender Player Lead 3. The body is in purple metallic, and typically these only came with a Pau Ferro fingerboard. So yes, this is a partscaster. I took the maple version of the Lead 3's neck and put it on this body instead. And I've got to say, the Player Series they make great necks for these guitars. Really, I like the specs a lot. The fit and finish is maybe where the compromise comes in. So for a very cheap price, you get a neck that has a modern C shaped profile, medium jumbo frets, 9.5-inch radius, 22 frets, a plastic nut, a satin on the back, gloss on the front, and a little bit of a tinted color to it. I love these specs. First of all, satin on the back, gloss on the front, maybe my favorite combination. I really like that a lot. Medium jumbo frets, probably my favorite frets. The 9.5-inch radius feels great, and the plastic nut, well, not so great. I ended up replacing mine with a bone nut, which made things a lot better. But, otherwise, great specs on this thing. Even the headstock is nice and glossed. Great wood grain on it, just looks fantastic. So all of those are pros. The only cons would be maybe the fit and finish. I do feel like in some places the satin is a little bit better feeling than others. I don't really know how to explain it. It just doesn't feel as even as other necks that I played, but it's not a big deal. Same with the frets themselves. As I slide up and down here, I can feel the fret ends kind of grabbing me at times. They stick out. It's not totally smooth here. Some tooling marks as well. Not a big deal. Doesn't affect the playability of the instrument. It's just, it just shows you that this was made in Mexico rather than made in the USA, and the quality is a little bit different. But ultimately, if you're looking for a cheap starter neck that's going to feel fantastic, that's going to be, very high quality other than some little things, and is going to look great and have a great combination of specs, there you go, the Player Series. So our next level up in Fender necks is the American Performer Series neck. This is another partscaster I put together, and so not an American Performer Series Telecaster, but I really liked this neck for two reasons. One, it had the kind of late 60s, 70s logo on there, but with Fender in silver, which is kind of a nice touch. And this is a thin line Telecaster. When these came out in the late 60s, they had that same logo, so I felt like it went together. And the other thing is that it is a very, very pale maple neck. There is no tinting to this neck whatsoever. It's almost bone white. And I actually feel like that doesn't really match a lot of finishes. It doesn't look good with certain colors. Keep that in mind. But with this kind of natural bird's eye maple top to this Telecaster and dark back, I just felt like this pale colored neck rather than a tinted one matched a lot better. And it feels great too. It's similar in some ways to the Player Series neck. It has the same neck profile, that modern C shape. And I didn't really even discuss before what that feels like. It's, well, a C shape of course, but kind of on the thinner side. I think that Fender puts the thinner C on their Player and Performer series because I think they know that it's going to be their cheaper models, and there's going to be people of all ages, maybe experienced or new guitar players, that are going to buy those instruments in particular. And therefore, having a slightly thinner neck, not crazy thin, but slightly thinner, is going to accommodate a lot of different players' hand size. I have smaller hands, so these feel great to me. If you have large hands, like very large hands, it might not be your favorite. But for most people, I think for 2 out of 3 guitar players, they feel pretty comfortable on this neck profile. So, what are the other differences between this neck and the player neck, other than the color? Well, it's satin on the back again, but it's also satin on the front. So I like a gloss finish, but this is not a bad satin finish on the fingerboard either. It still feels very smooth, nice to play. I don't feel a noticeable downgrade when I go from the other, the player guitar to this one, but it is something to be aware of. The frets now increase in size. They go from medium jumbo to full-on jumbo frets. These are big old frets, especially on a Fender. But they feel great when you bend them, when you play them. While I think medium jumbo kind of hits the sweet spot for me, I do like having a guitar with jumbo frets on here, because every time I play it, I go, whoa, that feels different, and I like it a lot. You still get the same old, kind of cheap nut on here. It's always a good idea to replace them with a bone nut if you're having sustain issues or just for better sound quality. But overall, man, the satin feels good on this thing. Feels better than on the player neck. The fret ends are not grabbing me anymore. They're done much nicer. I mean, looks-wise, it might be very pale and not quite as shiny as the other neck, but the build quality, I mean, you can tell the difference when you step up into the first level of an American neck. Really just all around fantastic. I'd say one other con I want to mention is the satin on the front, but also on the headstock. I like it even if they have a satin fingerboard, if they at least gloss the headstock. They didn't do that this time. So they kind of found ways to go cheaper on this neck and make this the entry-level American neck. But ultimately, I think it's going to suit a lot of players. It's still going to be at a pretty relatively low price point, and I'm glad I own one. I don't see myself ever giving one up. Now, the next neck that we're going to talk about comes from the American Professional Series, the next level up. Now, full disclosure, this is not an American Professional guitar from Fender. This is their 2019 limited edition Cabernita Telecaster. But basically, with this guitar, they just slapped the American Professional neck on this thing. This is the same thing that you'd find on an American Professional Telecaster. And, wow, what a fantastic neck. Here's where you get even more upgrades over the Player Series for sure, and even the Performer Series. And that's in the way of these rolled fingerboard edges. Oh, man, these just feel so nice to play. No sharp edges. And granted, the Performer Series doesn't really have sharp edges either. They feel kind of rolled, but not quite like this. This feels nice. You get satin on the back and gloss on the fingerboard, like the Player Series again, kind of my perfect combination. This time it's got some tiny frets, narrow, tall frets. These are supposed to be really good for bending, but Fender says all their frets are good for bending when you read the specs. So I kind of prefer medium jumbo to these, but I certainly can play these and don't really notice it after a minute. They still feel really, really great. The neck profile is the biggest change here. This is the introduction of the deep C neck profile. So still a C shape, but definitely much rounder, much chunkier. Not really a U-shaped neck, not that far. It's still a C, but this is a much bigger feeling neck in your hands. So if you have smaller hands, it might not be for you. Again, I have smaller hands, but they're not tiny. This is kind of my limit as far as comfort. Anybody with bigger hands is probably going to love this thing. Just really fills out nicely and feels good to just play some big old power chords with. Again, like the rolled fingerboard edges, the rest of the fit and finish on the thing is fantastic. Nice glossed headstock. You are going to pay a price to go up a little further here, but you are also going to get a bone nut stock with the instrument. So some of the upgrades you would have maybe done to the other necks, they're already here. So yeah, American Professional Series neck, fantastic. And finally, the American Ultra Series. This is not a Fender American Ultra Stratocaster. This is a partscaster I put together, but stuck the Ultra Series neck on here, and wow, this is a nice neck. So this time around, we get nice tinting to it. beautiful yellowed vintage tint, satin on the back, but also this time satin on the fingerboard. But a difference between this and the Performer series is that this time it's satin, but I don't know if you can tell in the camera here, it's still kind of glossy satin. It's somewhere in between. It's very, very glossy feeling satin. I know it's kind of just sounds like one big oxymoron, but that's the best way I can describe it. It just feels great. I really like it a lot. We go back to medium jumbo frets. Yes, my favorite. And this time you get a compound radius as well. So it's not 9.5-inch radius like the other 3 necks we talked about. This starts at 10 and goes all the way up to 14 and flattens out. So here it's great for playing chords. Here it's great for doing solos as it flattens out. Really a kind of cool feature of this thing. The profile is what's called their modern D profile. So it's kind of like their C-shaped neck, but then another layer of chunk was cut out. So similar to the modern C, but even thinner. For fast, shreddy players, you'd love this thing. Again, I have kind of smaller hands, so this feels great for me, but for someone with big hands, this is probably a no-no. The modern C, probably they can do, but this is where we get into the super, getting to super thin territory, and it's not going to be for everybody. But if you have small hands, you're gonna love it. And even though they satin the fingerboard, they gloss the headstock, give it a nice shiny gold logo as well. Really just a fantastic neck. The rolled edges, the nice high quality nut. I mean, you're gonna pay the price for an Ultra Stratocaster or an Ultra neck, but there's a reason why it is the mecca of Fender guitar necks right now. So, fantastically done, Fender. So all in all, what are my final thoughts about these different necks? I think the best value is definitely in the Player Series. You're going to compromise in some of the feel and fit and finish and in certain aspects of it, but it's such a great price and it just has such a great set of specs with those medium jumbo frets, satin back, gloss front, 9.5-inch radius. Just everything about it feels great. But I will say, each neck up, the quality does improve. The Performer series is fantastic because you start to get better fingerboard edges and you get the big old jumbo frets. But cosmetically, it's not going to be for everybody. It's very pale. Doesn't have that glossed headstock. On certain guitars, like the guitar that I put together there, I feel like it looks good. But on other guitars, it might have kind of a stark contrast. So keep that in mind. Now the Professional series, you have the American Professional 1 and 2 as far as what you want for pale or tint. So you get both options depending on which series you get. Otherwise, they're basically the same neck. But deep C profile, bigger for some people, and the narrow tall frets, not going to be for everybody as well. And the Ultra series, you get so many great specs. The medium jumbo, the really thin neck, the compound radius, the nice tint to it, satin on the back, and the kind of smooth feeling satin, but still kind of glossiness to it on the front. But hey, at that point you're paying the price. And again, that neck profile is thin. It's not going to be for everybody. So it's up to you to consider all of the different options and figure out what's the best for which guitar you want to buy or which neck you're going to put on a partscaster. Ultimately, I would leave you with this thought: keep your options open to other things. While those are the most common things you can purchase, if you are looking to purchase a neck separately, there's necks from other series of Fender guitars that have great specs that you can find rather than just the mainline ones that are common. For example, this partscaster I put together, I got this neck from a chambered limited edition Telecaster that came out, and look what we got here. We've got the modern C shape, so my favorite shape, gloss fingerboard, great, vintage tint, which I like, somewhat rolled edges, kind of like the Performer series, awesome, medium jumbo frets, my favorite, bone nut, and glossed headstock. I mean, it's 9.5-inch radius, 22 frets. It's got all the specs I like in one. So what I would encourage you to do is try out all these different necks, figure out what you like, and before you even settle on one, look online and see if there's a combination of all of the different specifications that you particularly like on a guitar. You never know if you might be able to find it and create the ultimate rocker. So thanks today for watching this video. If you like this video, let me know what you enjoyed about it in the comment section so I can keep on creating quality content. Subscribe if you want to see more of this. I plan on making more videos. And if you'd like to see maybe a Rosewood Pau Ferro comparison in the future, We can think about that as well. Ultimately, just stay tuned to K10 Music for even more guitar and musical instrument related content. Thank you very much.